A lot of things can go wrong in the course of a story. It can start strong and establish the show's major strength, then later fall apart as the story continues. But why would this happen? Were there any hints this would be the case from the beginning? In the case of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, the story's flaws were always present and only became more apparent as time passed. The time skip is what turned off some, but the problems have been present since the start. This starts with David as a character and continues with the setting of Night City. Edgerunners gets in the habit of forgetting what it is and further forgets its characters. This video will look at why some think Cyberpunk Edgerunners is not as good as the community believes, look at David Martinez as a character, and try to figure out what went wrong. Before we look at what supposedly went wrong with Edgerunners, we must first understand its strengths as a show. Cyberpunk lives off the underdog story of our main character, David. He comes from a poor family, and his only parent, Gloria, just wants him to get an education and climb the corporate ladder. David feels like he doesn't fit in and wants to leave school. This brings us to the car scene with David and Gloria. Gloria is upset with David since he went around the system, got an underground upgrade for his headset, and messed up the school system, making it go haywire. Gloria, David's hardworking mother, must now find some way to cover the costs of everything David messed up. David gives a less than sincere apology and starts giving excuses like his mother didn't have the money. But Gloria corrects David to tell him that he knew she didn't have the money and was only saving up. This scene does some interesting things, but it really shows how David doesn't want to do what his mom wants and explains how David does not fit into his school. Cyberpunk isn't really an underdog story, but about the class system. In episode 1, after David's mother dies, David is confronted by his blue-haired classmate. He begins to tell David he is no longer welcomed at the academy. The reason he gives is quite surprising. Instead of saying David is not welcomed since he is poor, blue-haired dude says David is not welcomed since he is a misfit and is the human equivalent of trash. Blue-haired dude even ignores David's mishap the day before. So let's make everything clear. Blue-haired dude is judging David not for things he can control, but for his character. But is blue-haired dude's judgment correct? Well, if we look at the very first scene of Cyberpunk, we see David playing with some illegal material where he can experience the death of another Edgerunner. David watches this material while knowing he must wash his clothes before school. David decides to wash his clothes afterwards and ends up with wet clothes that he can't wait to dry before class. What this tells us about David is that he does not want to fit in. David even points out this is not the first time the washer stopped working due to insufficient funds, and he knows he should wear a uniform. The story is confused on David's place in the story. Combine this with blue hair guy calling David only to mock him and reverse what he said earlier by saying David's mom should have stayed in her place is confusing. On one hand, Katsuo is a pure evil bully. On the other, he only bullies David since he is a misfit. The reason David is an outcast is confusing, and the show doesn't properly explain why. While we are on that, David does find a place where he feels he belongs. He joins a group of Edgerunners led by Maine. His relationship with the group starts off rocky as they try to hurt him for taking Maine's gear. David grows attached to the group, even though they don't accept him initially. David shows a strange willingness to learn the ropes to the point of annoying Maine. The early parts of David joining the group show some errors in David's characterization. He didn't want to go to the academy and felt excluded since the first day. However, when he joins Maine, he feels accepted when their relationship starts off rocky. The reason for this is that David is actually putting effort in this scenario. The show starts off with David's problem of not fitting in, but the show doesn't give the audience the chance to see David fit in with this new group. This is replaced with a montage of the gang doing a bunch of missions. A montage should not be used to replace character dynamics, especially when the show's main premise early on is about a character trying to find their place. The setup of this aspect of the show is weak. The montage is used to flesh out the cast in the worst way possible. Instead of us learning about the characters and the role of everyone in the group, we get a montage to speedrun important things, like how the group works or why they are even in Main's group. This is the most apparent with Pilar and Kiwi. With Pilar, not much is known about him to make the audience care, and his character just serves as a shocking moment that doesn't really do much in terms of the narrative. We're already warned about the potential of cyberpsychosis as early as the first episode, and his death doesn't do much for Rebecca since she's written off the show after the incident, and misses important moments in the group like Main's death. Pilar dying doesn't do much to the group. You can tell by how everything goes as usual business when the gang tries to kidnap JK. Nothing is mentioned on how Pilar could have helped or changed the situation since his role was non-existent. As for Kiwi, she's pretty much nobody before the time skip and doesn't make much sense as a character. Kiwi puts herself in the vulnerable position of net running while telling characters like Lucy not to trust anyone in Night City. Something as simple as someone waking up can easily mess up net running, yet Kiwi is the net runner for the group. The setting is another thing Edgerunners does not properly develop. Sure, we know this world takes place in some futuristic version of California, but why do characters talk negatively about Night City? Is it just because it's a capitalist society run by mega corporations? How do these corporations affect the lives of the average person? How does this city make people believe you should never trust anyone? As we see in Main's group, it comes off as if they do trust each other. The montage shows this, and when Pilar dies, the whole gang comes fighting to defend their fallen comrade. Main and Kiwi even stay back to explain the situation to the police to resolve the issue. Since Night City takes place in some futuristic version of California, why don't characters just move out of the city if it's so bad? We know other countries exist from Lucy's backstory in episode 7. Kiwi attempts to leave the city in the last episode, and we discover that Night City is a good place to hide from the mega corporations. But why? Arasaka and Militech still function in Night City, so what makes it such a great place to hide? If it is a good place to hide, why is Lucy so concerned with them finding David when they're in the best place to hide from them? Ironically, the only reason they get David is due to Kiwi backstabbing Lucy for insert poor reason here. Kiwi backstabs the group, just because that's the way things go in Night City. First, this idea of Night City is not properly shown, and the fact that Night City is the best place to be while on the run contradicts her statement. Night City just doesn't make sense, and characters like Kiwi suffer from this problem. Now for what Cyberpunk Edgerunners is really about. Cyberpunk is about following the dreams of others while forgetting about your own. We see this with David attending the academy and Lucy being raised as a netrunner. Both characters follow the dreams of others and try to find what matters to them. In the case of David, he is consistently following the dreams of others to the point where it doesn't make sense. This is shown in the car scene, as previously mentioned. David is okay with not following his mom's dream and never thought he would fit in. David goes as far as joining a gang, something David's mom would not approve of, judging by the fact that she did not let him carry. The academy even recruits David after his fight with Katsuo. They contact him several times, and David always tells them no. David thinks Katsuo is using this as some sort of revenge plot. This makes sense, given what we know so far. What doesn't make sense is what happens in episode 6. Things are tense. Main is on the brink of breaking mentally, and Kiwi is out of commission, so David and Lucy must finish the job of extracting information from an Arasaka member. Lucy has to take Kiwi's place in net running, and David must make sure the Arasaka executive stays asleep. The problem with this scene is the sudden whiplash of David's character. David suddenly cares about going back to school after everything that has happened. The show just forgets David refused to listen to the principal and even insulted him when they called him earlier. The show forgets that David didn't want to be in the academy since day one. The show also forgets that David tried to keep his past as an academy student under the table, since it didn't align with everyone else in the group. David listening to the Arasaka executive completely destroys David's character, since he has no reason to care about going back to school, especially when he's in the terrible state of kidnapping the guy while his girlfriend is net running, and David constantly saying he doesn't care about the academy. The moment feels like the writer had to force the moment to happen, since everything we know about David says he would act differently. Getting back to the idea of dreams, David doesn't make sense in this aspect. After the time skip, Lucy points out that David is following someone else's dreams, and we find out that this is Main. But what dreams is David following? Maine never gives David some dream for David to follow. He only gives him his fair share and tells David that's the way he likes to do things. The idea of David supposedly following Maine's dream is made up. Now for the finale of Edgerunners, and my biggest criticism of the show. David's death was poorly done. The reason for this is simple. If a story is going to make a character do horrible things when they are supposed to be a good person, a writer tries to get the audience to understand where that character is coming from. For David, after the time skip, this is a very tall task. The childish response of "I'm built different" is David's main reason for constantly destroying his body, as everyone can see. This response makes David into one of two things: painfully stubborn, since everything in the story, including Maine's and Pilar's death, show the dangers of cyberpsychosis, or David actually thinks he's built different? This would shatter the idea of David thinking negatively of his former school. The kids from that school just lucked their way into a rich family. They never worked hard for it. They never got what they were worth, like what Maine believed. When David murders the innocent mother, he becomes even more irrational. David does whatever he feels, and even tries to pressure Lucy to rejoin the group, when there's no real reason for her to return, considering he has to become more mature and still spends time with her at home. Apart from David's cyberpsychosis moments, the group appears to function well. Overall, Cyberpunk is ambitious, but it fails on almost every level. David's death almost feels satisfying given the constant warnings he's given, attacking the doc and trying to break up with Lucy when he's in the wrong. David's made-up reason for continuing to act this way due to his mom and Maine makes no sense, considering his mom never wanted him to live this kind of life, and when she was living, David rejected it. In the end, Cyberpunk was never that good.